All right, so we left off talking about saturated and unsaturated fats. Saturated, full of those hydrogens, no double bonds. Unsaturated, um, have those double bonds in there, so they kink up and they're typically liquid at room temperature. So, what we see is as we process food, uh, we can hydrogenate these unsaturated fats. So, we insert in all of these hydrogens, breaking those double bonds. This makes it taste better, have a better texture, and a longer shelf life. So, we see a lot of these hydrogenated foods, not necessarily healthy for you, but man, do they taste good. Okay, and so what we see here is we've got this big kink here in this fatty acid chain. We insert in those hydrogens, break that double bond, and that kink lessens. So this is partially hydrogenated. This is what we call a trans fat. Um, and so increases risk of heart disease, but we see a lot of our junk foods have these hydrogenated fats. Okay, things like Oreos, McDonald's, French fries. They're happy because they eat lard, right? It tastes really good, but man, that stuff not really good for you in the long run. Okay, jumping to some other lipids, waxes are a type of lipid. Do you think they're saturated or unsaturated? Okay, they're solid at low and room temperature, so that tells us that these are saturated fats. Okay, because they keep this solid structure. Okay, they are hydrophobic, as all fats are. They keep moisture. They will not mix with water. Okay, and so we get these waxes in lots of plants. Various animals will produce waxes to keep water from getting into places they don't want it. Okay. Phospholipids, super important type of lipid, makes up all cell membranes. Okay? So what we see is we have this phosphate group as part of the head, which is hydrophilic. The head loves water, so it's always going to be attracted to that extracellular matrix in our bodies, which is mostly water. Okay, it is polar. Okay, the phosphate group is. Okay. Um, Within here, in this phosphate group is hydrophilic. However, this head in general will not mix with that water. Okay. Um, we have our other fatty group, our hydrophobic tail, which hates water. So it's going to want to be away from the water when we're forming these membranes. And it is nonpolar, so it will not mix with that water. Okay. In our third group, we have our steroids, also sterols. Okay. Now it's important to note that steroids as a lipid doesn't always refer to anabolic steroids that make muscles big. We've got all sorts of type of steroids. They're all just signaling molecules, or hormones. Okay. These are all four ring structures with carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so we've got cholesterol is one. Cholesterol can be good, it can be bad. Essentially, it just changes the flow of a plasma membrane. And when we talk about plasma membranes, we'll get into that. We also have other hormones like cortisone, and we see our cholesterol here. We see estrogen and testosterone, which are all very similar molecules, just some slight differences between them. Okay, but these are all signaling molecules and they're considered to be lipids. Okay, it's about the tortoise. He tested positive for steroids, right? And that's why he beat the hare. Okay, proteins, another major category of macromolecules. These build living things. So we've got a lot of different functions that we see here. Structural, our hair, our fingernails, the feathers of birds, horns of animals, cartilage and tendons, all made mostly by protein. They're protective. We've got various proteins that help in immune response and blood coagulation. They're regulatory, so they can control the activity of cells. Some hormones have proteins that play part of that role. Contractile, okay? This is what allows our muscles to contract and relax, allow sperm to swim, all protein. And then transport, they can help move molecules in and out of the cell. Okay? Couple examples, we've got our snake venom. Okay, that's a protein. Some snakes have hemotoxic venom, and that protein breaks down our red blood cells and things like that. Tetanus is a protein produced by bacteria, which causes our muscles to contract involuntarily. And it causes this terrible disease, tetanus, that we see down here. Okay. The monomer of proteins is the amino acid. Okay. There are 20 different amino acids that we see, for the most part, used to make all of the proteins we have. And the order in which these amino acids are strung together determine what protein we have. Okay. When we look at food labels, they tell us 12 grams of protein or your 20% of your daily value of protein. This is not a lot of information, because if you remember when we talked about the breakdown of these macromolecules, we have to do hydrolysis. Any proteins that we eat, we have to break them down first. So we're going to break them down into their amino acids, and then we're going to build our own proteins. So whatever amino acids made up that protein we ate is what we now have to work with to build our new proteins, which could use different amino acids. So we see here we've got complete versus incomplete proteins. And typically the foods that are complete proteins come mostly from animals. And then we've also got our tofu here, chicken, beef, milk. These are complete proteins. They're going to have all 20 of those amino acids in them. So when we consume those things, we're getting all of the amino acids we need. But if we look here at white rice, we're missing the amino acid lysine. So if you only eat white rice, you're not going to be able to build the amino acids that require lysine. Lentils, you're missing methionine and cysteine. Okay? So you can't build the proteins that have those if all you eat is lentils. Okay? But obviously people that are vegetarian get all the amino acids they need because they're still alive. Essentially what we see is we need a mixed diet. If you have white rice and lentils, you're getting everything you need and you're good to go. Okay? Because in order to build your proteins again, you need all of those different amino acids to do it. Okay? A protein's function, so the way that a protein works, is partially dependent on its shape. So we have 4 types of structure that we see within proteins. We've got our primary structure, and this is just the order of those amino acids. So we could have styrene, then lysine, phenylalanine, and then whatever else. And that's just that chain, the order of the amino acids. Then we've got our secondary structure. We can get these alpha helices or beta pleated sheets. And depending on what amino acids are there, it will form one of these structures. Then we have our tertiary structure. This is that 3-dimensional shape that as that protein gets bigger starts to take on. And so sometimes this is the end and boom, we've got a protein. But a lot of the times, multiple of these chains will bond together to form that whole protein. And it's going to have an overall 3-dimensional shape that will tell us how it's going to function. Okay. Curly hair and straight hair. It's all about the shape of those proteins. Okay. We make proteins within our hair, and that's going to determine whether that hair sits straight or whether that hair curls up. Now, as I'm sure we're all aware, there are things you can do if you have straight hair to get curly hair, or if you have curly hair to get straight hair. And so heat can change the 3-dimensional structure of those proteins, giving it an overall different shape. Okay, so we're approaching that 10 minutes here, so we'll go ahead and stop this video, and we'll continue on here with proteins in the next video.